Okay, everybody, today we're going to be talking about fiction and nonfiction. These are going to be two different genres. Your library is split into two sections. If you walk into the library here at Mann Middle School, you will find a fiction section and a nonfiction section. Let's dive in and find out what those mean. All categories of books or stories can be called either fiction or nonfiction. Fiction is a made up story. You can tell about things that could happen, not have happened, but could happen. It's read for fun. It is entertaining. And characters may be like real people or they may be imaginary. Again, a good way to remember this is that fiction is fake. Fiction, fake. It's a made up story. Now let's dive over to nonfiction. Nonfiction has facts that can be checked and proven, historical facts. That means you can Google something that you read in a nonfiction book and find it to be true. The author is an expert on the information. Again, you would only want an expert writing a book that can be fact checked and proven. Fiction or nonfiction? Let's talk about fiction. The story is created from the author's imagination. Stories, again, are pretend. They are not true. They are made up stories. Animals or objects can talk. They can wear clothes. Animals can even have jobs. A book that you'll read later on in high school will be called Animal Farm. It is a story about a farm where a bunch of animals talk to each other and live in a community at a farm, but it really symbolizes a current situation in America of 1950s. More on fiction, people in the story can do things people cannot really do, like superheroes. We know that any story about Batman or Superman would be fictional because people in real life cannot fly. They cannot jump over buildings. Finally, in fiction, stories might have funny pictures. Think of the fictional story, The Three Little Pigs. There were funny pictures that showed the pigs building their house and having the big bad wolf blow them down. That does not, nor can it happen in real life. Forms of fiction. There are three forms of fiction. The main forms are: 1, a novel. A novel is a long work of fiction. It contains the basic elements of fiction. It may contain subplots along with the main plot. A subplot is a small plot within the big plot. It could be used as a flashback. They're independent, related stories. Number 2 on the three main forms of fiction is a novella. Shorter than a novel, but longer than a short story. And finally, the third main form of fiction is a short story. That's a brief work of fiction. It contains basic elements of fiction, one main plot, one main conflict, and most short stories can be read in one sitting. On average, and there is no rule to it, novels are usually 250 pages or more. Novellas are usually 150 pages or so. And short stories usually are under 100 pages, mainly because most short stories can be read in one sitting. A fictional story is a story that is not real. Some examples would be picture books, chapter books. A great chapter book that we are working through in my period 2 is Samurai Shortstop. It is a completely fictional book, but a really entertaining and fun read. Comic books, like anything with superheroes, with Batman or Superman or Wonder Woman. It is not real, it is fictional. And finally, storybooks. Storybooks like The Three Little Pigs or Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty, anything from Disney. Genres of fiction. There's mystery, A popular mystery author is Nancy Drew. There's horror. We've probably all heard of the books Goosebumps. There is fantasy. Harry Potter falls under the genre of fictional fantasy. Science fiction, like Star Wars. Myths, fairy tales, legends, like Cinderella's story. Historical fiction, like The Book Thief. It's a real concept that the author writes about, but nothing in the book is factual. Can you name any others genres of fiction? Think about it. The elements of fiction. We have the setting. That's where the story takes place. The character, the main characters and the sub-characters. Plot. That's the order and action of the story. Point of view. The person's point of view of who is telling the story. It can be told in a negative or positive point of view. Theme. Remember again, theme is what the reader should learn from the story. It's universal. Every person in the world can understand an author's theme. Symbolism and others. Fiction or nonfiction? Let's talk about nonfiction now. The story is true and factual. Stories are about real people, not pretend people, not made up people, but real people who lived, breathed, died, or are still living. Nonfiction books give information. They might have maps or even real pictures. If it has real pictures, those pictures usually have captions describing the photo. An index in the back helps find information. You might have a glossary which defines some words. And I don't know why there's a picture of a pig in my PowerPoint, but it's there. So what is nonfiction? Nonfiction is text that is true and based on real information. Some forms of nonfiction can be newspapers and dictionaries, encyclopedias, scholastic news, textbooks, magazines, nonfiction books. Forms of nonfiction. There are two broad categories of nonfiction, and they're literary nonfiction and functional text. Literary nonfiction and functional text. Let's look at literary nonfiction. Literary nonfiction has elements of fiction. For example, it might be vivid descriptions, a dramatic writing style, or poetic language. Vivid descriptions is where the author uses words where it allows you as the reader to actually see in your head what is happening. Vivid, you can see it. Functional text, the second category of nonfiction, gives instructions, shows directions, explains rules, provides other information that helps you complete procedures, often uses illustrations or graphics. So if you have ever played a board game with your family or friends and you needed to read the rule book first, you have read a functional nonfiction text. Instructions on how to be a better player on Fortnite. If you've read instructions on that, where to hide, where to go, how to build, you have read a functional text for nonfiction. If you've ever opened up a pack of Legos to build whatever you bought, there's usually directions on how to build those Legos. Those are forms of nonfiction through functional text. You use functional text every day. More literary nonfiction are autobiographies and memoirs. Remember, again, we spoke about those. Autobiographies are a biography written by the person about the person. If Mr. Womack wanted to write a biography about himself, it would be called an autobiography. But Mr. Womack won't, because I have not done anything significant to the world to recognize that, as much as I think I have. And memoirs. Memoirs are going to be your own personal snapshots of parts of your life that you write down. Memoirs can be absolutely true, or they can be in the form of your own realistic memory of what you remember in that snapshot. An example I love to use is when I rode Space Mountain for the first time at Disneyland. I thought that car went so fast. So if I were to write about it, I would talk about how fast it went. I thought it went 60 miles per hour. But now writing it as an adult, it only goes 40 miles per hour. Notice that it's not factual, but it was real to me as I experienced it. That's how a memoir can take place. Biographies tells the story of someone's life from the perspective of another writer. And then letters, written communications from person to person. I would highly encourage you, if you have not written a letter to somebody in the last 2 years, try to write a letter. Write a letter to your grandparents. I'm sure they would enjoy it. Essays and articles, those are brief works about a specific topic. Reviews tells what is good and what's bad about a work or art or performance. Reports give information about a topic explored through research. Functional text. These are ones that we use every single day. Recipes. They tell you how to prepare food. Have you ever followed a recipe at home? Hopefully it turned out yummy. Directions tell how to operate or assemble equipment. An example would be the Legos. If you bought Legos and followed the directions, you would be able to do that. Also, functional text would be if you ever printed out directions to go to your friend's house through Google Maps. You're reading those are a functional text through directions. Schedules tells when events take place. Every year when you get a schedule for school, you are reading a functional text. Menus tell which foods are available and how much they cost. Fast food menus count as functional text, and Mr. Womack eats those a little too often. Brochures, they use pictures and text to advertise places or events. You will be getting a brochure in the next few years from Crawford High School that uses pictures and text to advertise how cool of a school that is. Maps, they're diagrams that show areas of land. And finally, applications. They're written requests to an authority. You will use this when you apply for your first job. You will have to fill out a functional text called a job application. Features of nonfiction: table of contents, glossary, index, headings, bold print, photographs or real pictures, charts, graphs, and maps, captions, and fact and opinion. Now I'm going to have you interact with your PowerPoint. Please follow the directions as you'll see them on my screen. I am going to minimize so you're able to see this easier. What you're going to do is I'm going to have you highlight each sentence either in yellow for fiction or orange for nonfiction. What you have to do is click on the text first. Once you click on the text, the highlight button or highlight color will arise. You simply need to highlight or select the sentence that you want and then move over and either turn it to orange for nonfiction or yellow for fiction. Let's do one together. A mouse that sings. Can a mouse really sing? I would say that's more pretend. Therefore, it's fake. Therefore, it is fiction. So I would highlight that yellow. How to cook spaghetti. Seems like that would be directions. Directions fall under non-fiction. So I would come over to my highlight color and highlight that one orange. I'd like you to do the remainder of the sentences. Once you have finished your PowerPoint and completed all the blank words and all of the colors for fiction and nonfiction, you may close your computer and pull out your independent reading book, and you may read for the remainder of class. If you feel that you need to finish your bell work journals because grades are due on Friday and you need more time to finish it, you may keep your computer open and work on your bell work journal. No music, no games, simply do the work, and when you're done, you may go back to reading a book. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you've learned a lot about fiction and nonfiction.